Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty and watched the stars through the big window in front of him. 3 months had passed since they left Earth and started their mission to explore new worlds. His crew was good and they had worked well together during the long trip through space. Dr. Lisa Parker was the best doctor he had ever worked with, and she took care of everyone on the ship. Commander Ryan Torres was tough and smart about fighting if they needed to fight. Amy Chun was great at talking to people, and she could speak many different languages. Jake had been a ship captain for 15 years, but he had never been this far from Earth before. The Liberty was a good ship with strong engines and thick walls to protect them from space rocks and radiation. They had food for 2 years and water recyclers that could clean their water forever. The mission was simple, but important. They needed to find new places where humans could live and make friends with any aliens they might meet. Today was different because their sensors had found something big. Amy Chun looked at her computer screen and turned to face Jake. Her eyes were wide with excitement and maybe a little fear too. She said the sensors had found 12 ships that were not human ships. The ships were big and they moved in perfect lines like they were part of a military group. Jake told Ryan to get ready for a fight, but also told Amy to try to talk to the aliens first. The alien ships looked strange and beautiful at the same time. They were long and thin like spears, but they had curves that made them look alive. Their metal was silver and blue, and it seemed to shine with its own light. Jake had never seen anything like them, and he wondered what kind of people had built such ships. The ships moved closer to the Liberty, but they did not point their weapons at the human ship. Amy worked hard to send a message to the aliens. She used math and pictures to show that humans wanted to be friends. It took 2 hours, but finally one of the alien ships answered back. The voice that came through their speakers was cold and sounded like rocks scraping together. The alien said they were called Zephyrians and they wanted to meet the humans face to face. Jake agreed to meet them on his ship. He put on his best uniform and made sure his crew looked good too. Dr. Parker checked everyone to make sure they were healthy, and Ryan made sure their weapons were ready but hidden. Amy practiced the few Zephyrian words she had learned from listening to their radio signals. When the aliens came aboard their ship, Jake got his first look at them. The Zephyrians were taller than humans, and their skin looked like it was made of small blue and green crystals. Their bodies were thin, but they looked very strong. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their eyes were big and yellow like cat eyes. They wore no clothes because their crystal skin was already like armor. When they walked, their feet made clicking sounds on the metal floor. The leader of the aliens was called High Commander Vexstar. He was bigger than the others, and his crystal skin was darker blue. Next to him was a smaller Zephyrian who said her name was Ambassador Cathara. She was the one who would do most of the talking. Her voice was softer than the commander's voice, but Jake could hear that she thought she was better than the humans. The meeting started in the main conference room. Jake sat across from the aliens with his crew around him. Dr. Parker was taking notes and Ryan was watching for any signs of danger. Amy was ready to help with translation if they needed it. The aliens looked around the room, and Jake could see they were not impressed with human technology. Ambassador Cathara spoke first. She said the Zephyrians had been watching human radio signals for many years. She said they knew humans were a young species that had only just learned to travel between stars. Her voice had a mean tone when she talked about how weak and soft humans looked. She pointed at Jake's hands and said human skin was too thin and would tear easily. She said human bones were hollow like bird bones and would break if someone looked at them wrong. High Commander Vexstar made a sound that might have been laughing. He said humans looked like the fleshworms that lived in the dirt on their home planet. He said fleshworms were the weakest creatures they knew, and they were only good for feeding to stronger animals. The other Zephyrians made the same laughing sound, and Jake felt his face get hot with anger. Dr. Parker tried to explain that humans were tougher than they looked. She said human bodies were designed to be flexible and to heal quickly when they got hurt. The aliens did not seem to believe her. Ambassador Cathara said that any species that needed to wear clothes to survive could not be very strong. She said Zephyrian crystal skin protected them from heat and cold and weapons. She said humans would die in most of the places where Zephyrians lived. The meeting was going badly when something happened that made it worse. Commander Ryan was reaching for his water cup when his hand hit the edge of the metal table. The edge was sharp and it cut his palm. Red blood started to flow from the cut and dripped onto the white table. Ryan said he was okay and Dr. Parker quickly cleaned the cut and put a bandage on it. The Zephyrians jumped back from the table like the blood was poison. Their yellow eyes got very wide and they made disgusted sounds. Ambassador Cathara said she had never seen anything so gross. She said blood was proof that humans were made of weak materials that leaked when damaged. High Commander Vexstar said any creature that bled from such a small injury had no business traveling in the dangerous areas of space. Dake tried to stay calm, but he was getting very angry. He said humans might look different from Zephyrians, but they were still smart and brave. He said humans had survived many terrible things on their home planet, and they had learned to work together to solve problems. The aliens did not seem to care about what he said. Ambassador Cathara stood up and said the meeting was over. She said Zephyrians were clearly the superior species and humans should go back to their safe little planet before they got themselves killed. She said space was too dangerous for such fragile creatures. High Commander Vexstar agreed and said humans were like children playing with tools they did not understand. As the aliens left the ship, Jake felt frustrated and angry. His crew looked upset too. They had hoped to make friends with the first aliens they met, but instead they had been insulted and dismissed. Ryan looked at his bandaged hand and shook his head. Dr. Parker said she wanted to study Zephyrian biology to understand why they thought they were so much better than humans. Amy said the aliens had been rude and mean for no good reason. Jake looked out at the alien ships and made a decision. He was not going to let the Zephyrians think humans were weak. Somehow he would prove that humans deserved respect even if they looked different from other species. He did not know how he would do it, but he knew his crew would help him find a way. The next morning, Jake got a message from High Commander Vexstar that he did not expect. The alien leader said he wanted to give humans a chance to prove they were not as weak as they looked. He said the Zephyrians would set up tests to see if humans could survive in a real dangerous place. If humans passed the test, then Zephyrians would treat them with respect. If humans failed, then they would have to leave this part of space and never come back. Jake called his senior crew to a meeting. Dr. Parker said it sounded like a trap, but Ryan said it might be their only chance to change the aliens' minds about humans. Amy said the Zephyrians seemed very proud, and they probably thought humans would be too scared to accept the challenge. Jake thought about it for a long time. He knew it was risky, but he also knew that humans needed to prove themselves. If they wanted to explore space safely, he sent a message back to Vexstar saying humans would accept the challenge. The alien commander seemed pleased and said the tests would take place on a moon that orbited a big gas planet in their solar system. He said the moon was one of the most dangerous places in the area and that even Zephyrians found it difficult to survive there. Jake began to worry that he had made a mistake, but it was too late to change his mind now. The moon was called Kethmer in the Zephyrian language, which meant place of testing. When Amy translated it, the place looked terrible from space. It was covered in gray rocks and had no plants or water that they could see. The atmosphere was thin and full of poisonous gases. The temperature changed from very hot to very cold every few hours. There were also dangerous animals that lived in caves under the rocks. Jake had to choose 3 people to go down to the moon for the tests. He picked Lieutenant Ben Carter, who was a Marine and knew how to fight and survive in bad places. He also picked Engineer Sophie Lewis, who was smart about machines and could fix almost anything. The third person was Medic Danny Rodriguez, who could take care of people if they got hurt. All 3 of them were young and strong, and they volunteered to go even though they knew it would be very dangerous. The Zephyrians also sent 3 of their best warriors. Their names were too hard for humans to say, so Amy called them Iron Scale, Void Claw, and Stormshell based on what their names meant in human language. Iron Scale was the biggest and strongest. Void Claw was fast and mean-looking. Stormshell was smart and careful. All three of them had thick crystal armor that covered their whole bodies, and they carried weapons that looked very advanced. Both teams went down to the moon in small ships. The humans wore special suits to protect them from the poisonous air and the radiation. The Zephyrians did not need suits because their crystal skin protected them from most dangers. Right away, Jake could see that his team was at a disadvantage. The human equipment looked simple next to the alien technology. The first test was to climb a tall mountain and reach a crystal marker at the top. The mountain was covered in sharp rocks and the wind was very strong. Ben Carter started climbing first, but his gloves got torn on the rocks and his hands started bleeding. Sophie Lewis tried to use her tools to make the climbing easier, but the cold made her equipment stop working. Danny Rodriguez got tired very quickly because the thin air made it hard to breathe. The Zephyrians climbed the mountain like it was easy. Their crystal skin protected them from the sharp rocks, and they did not need to breathe as much as humans did. Iron Scale reached the top in half the time it took Ben Carter. The aliens looked down at the struggling humans and made their laughing sounds again. Ambassador Cathara was watching from her ship, and she sent a message saying humans were even weaker than she had thought. The second test was to cross a valley full of acid pools. The acid could burn through metal and it made poisonous smoke that hurt to breathe. The humans had to move very slowly and carefully to avoid the dangerous areas. Sophie Lewis stepped too close to one pool and the acid splashed on her leg. Even through her protective suit, the acid gave her a bad burn. She screamed in pain but kept walking because she did not want to give up. The Zephyrians ran across the valley like they were running on safe ground. Their crystal armor protected them from the acid, and they did not seem bothered by the poisonous smoke. Void Claw finished the test before the humans were even halfway across. Stormshell helped his teammates even though he did not need help himself. The humans looked clumsy and slow compared to the graceful aliens. The third test was the worst one. Both teams had to spend a full day and night in the cave system without any heating or special equipment. The caves were very cold and full of dangerous animals. The humans huddled together to stay warm, but they were still shivering and their teeth were chattering. Ben Carter's broken arm from the climbing test was hurting very badly. Sophie's burn was getting worse, and Danny was getting sick from breathing the bad air for so long. During the night, they heard strange sounds coming from deeper in the caves. Danny went to investigate and found a creature that looked like a giant spider with metal claws. The creature attacked him and knocked him down. His suit got torn and he was exposed to the cold air. Ben and Sophie tried to help him, but they were too cold and tired to move quickly. Danny passed out from the cold and his body temperature dropped to a dangerous level. The Zephyrians stayed in a different part of the cave system. They did not seem bothered by the cold at all. Their crystal skin kept them warm and their natural armor protected them from the creatures. Iron Scale actually went hunting for sport and killed several of the spider creatures just to show how easy it was. The aliens slept comfortably while the humans struggled to survive. When morning came, the human team was in terrible shape. Ben's arm was swollen and he could barely move it. Sophie's burn had gotten infected and she had a fever. Danny was still unconscious and his breathing was very shallow. Dr. Parker was monitoring them from the ship and she was very worried. She told Jake that the team needed medical help right away or they might die. The Zephyrians came out of the caves looking fresh and strong. They had not been hurt at all during the night. Iron Scale was carrying the head of one of the spider creatures as a trophy. When they saw the condition of the human team, they made disgusted sounds. Ambassador Cathara said this proved that humans were too weak to survive in space. High Commander Vexstar sent a message to both ships. He said the tests were over and humans had failed completely. He said it was clear that humans were fragile creatures who belonged on their safe home planet. He said the Zephyrians would not allow such weak beings to claim territory in their part of space. He ordered the human ship to leave immediately and never return. Jake felt angry and embarrassed. His team had tried their best, but they had been beaten badly. The aliens were right that humans looked weak compared to them. Ben was still holding his broken arm and trying not to cry from the pain. Sophie was leaning against a rock because Her burned leg could not support her weight. Danny was awake now, but he was still very sick from the cold exposure. The Zephyrians were broadcasting the results of the tests to other alien ships in the area. They were telling everyone that humans were pathetic and weak. They said humans had no business traveling in space because they would just get themselves killed. They said any species that got hurt so easily from simple tests was clearly inferior. The human team was lifted back to their ship. Jake made a promise to himself. Somehow he would prove that humans were stronger than the aliens thought. He did not know how, but he refused to give up. His crew had been brave and they had tried their best. Maybe they looked weak now, but Jake had a feeling that the Zephyrians did not understand everything about human nature. He decided to wait and see what would happen when his people had time to heal from their injuries. Dr. Parker worked on the injured team members as soon as they got back to the ship. She put Ben Carter in the medical bay and took pictures of his broken arm with her scanner. The break was bad, and normally it would take many weeks to heal. She gave him medicine for the pain and put his arm in a special cast. Sophie Lewis needed treatment for her acid burn, and Dr. Parker cleaned the wound carefully before putting healing gel on it. Danny Rodriguez was the worst case because his body temperature was still too low and he was having trouble breathing. Jake visited his injured crew members and felt terrible about what had happened to them. Ben tried to smile and said he would be fine in a few weeks. Sophie said the burn was not as bad as it looked and she would be back to work soon. Danny was too sick to talk much, but he squeezed Jake's hand to show he did not blame his captain for the failed mission. All three of them said they were glad they had tried even though they had lost. The Zephyrians were still sending messages to other ships about how weak humans were. Ambassador Cathara made fun of the human injuries and said it proved her point about human fragility. She said humans were like glass dolls that broke when you touch them. High Commander Vextar said humans should go back to Earth and stay there where it was safe. The alien ships were getting ready to leave, and they expected the humans to leave, too. But something strange started happening that the Zephyrians did not expect. On the second day after the test, Dr. Parker noticed that Ben's arm was healing much faster than it should. The bone was already starting to grow back together and the swelling was going down. She took more pictures and could not believe what she was seeing. A break that should take 6 weeks to heal was healing in days. Sophie's acid burn was also healing in an amazing way. The burned skin was falling off and new healthy skin was growing underneath. The infection was gone and the wound was closing up. Dr. Parker had never seen human tissue repair itself so quickly. Sophie said the pain was almost completely gone, and she could walk normally again. Danny's recovery was the most surprising of all. His body temperature had returned to normal and his breathing was getting stronger every hour. But more than that, he seemed to be adapting to the conditions he had faced on the moon. His lungs were working better than before and he could handle low oxygen levels that would make other people pass out. It was like his body had learned from the experience and made itself tougher. Dr. Parker called Jake to the medical bay to show him what was happening. She explained that human bodies were designed to heal and adapt in ways that most other species could not. She said humans had evolved on a planet where they faced many different dangers, and their bodies had learned to repair damage quickly and completely. She said what the Zephyrians saw as weakness was actually one of humanity's greatest strengths. Jake was amazed by what he was seeing. He asked Dr. Parker to record everything and make detailed notes about the healing process. He had an idea that this information might be important later. He also told her to monitor the crew members closely to see how complete their recovery would be. He was starting to think that maybe the tests were not over yet. The Zephyrians had sensors that could detect what was happening on the human ship. At first they thought the humans were using some kind of advanced medical technology to heal their injuries. Ambassador Cathara accused the humans of cheating by using illegal enhancement drugs. She said no natural creature could heal so quickly from such serious injuries. High Commander Vextar ordered his science team to scan the human ship more carefully. They were looking for hidden medical equipment or drug manufacturing systems. But their scans showed that the humans were not using any technology that the Zephyrians did not already know about. The healing was happening naturally without any artificial help. This news disturbed the alien commander because it did not match what he believed about human weakness. By the third day, Ben Carter's arm was completely healed. The bone was stronger than it had been before it was broken. Sophie Lewis showed no signs that she had ever been burned, and her skin looked perfect. Danny Rodriguez was not only healthy, but he seemed to have more energy than before his cold exposure. All three of them said they felt better than they had in months. Jake decided it was time to show the Zephyrians what human recovery really meant. He sent a message to High Commander Vexstar asking for permission to return to the moon for more tests. He said his team was ready to try again and prove that their first attempt was not their best effort. The alien commander was confused by this request because he thought the humans were too injured to even leave their ship. Ambassador Cathara said the humans were clearly lying about their condition. She said it was impossible for such badly injured creatures to recover so quickly. She accused them of using robot doubles or holographic projections to fool the Zephyrian sensors. High Commander Vexstar was curious enough to agree to let the humans try again. He said it would be amusing to watch them fail a second time. The same human team went back down to the moon, but this time they were different. Ben Carter climbed the rocky mountain without any trouble, and his hands did not bleed when they touched the sharp stones. His skin had become tougher and his grip was stronger. Sophie Lewis crossed the acid valley with confidence, and even when acid splashed on her, she did not get burned. Her skin had somehow become resistant to the chemical damage. Danny Rodriguez moved through the thin, poisonous air like he had been born on the moon. His lungs had adapted to process the dangerous gases, and his body could work with much less oxygen than before. He was not tired or sick at all. The Zephyrians watched in shock as the humans completed the same tests that had nearly killed them just a few days earlier, but the humans did not stop there. They began doing things that even the Zephyrians found difficult. Ben Carter started climbing faster than Iron Scale, and his endurance seemed unlimited. Sophie Lewis found ways to cross dangerous areas that the Zephyrians had avoided. Danny Rodriguez went deeper into the cave system than any of the aliens had dared to go, and he came back with samples of rare minerals. The Zephyrian warriors tried to keep up with the humans, but they found it surprisingly difficult. Their crystal armor protected them, but it also made them heavy and slow. They could not adapt to new challenges the way humans could. Iron Scale became frustrated when Ben Carter beat him in a climbing race. Void Claw was amazed when Sophie Lewis solved engineering problems that he could not figure out. Stormshell was impressed when Danny Rodriguez survived in conditions that would challenge even experienced Zephyrian soldiers. Dr. Parker was monitoring everything from the ship and explaining to Jake what was happening. She said human evolution had given them the ability to become stronger after being damaged. She said their muscles rebuilt themselves better than before when they were forced to work hard. She said their bones became denser after being broken. She said their skin became tougher after being cut or burned. She explained that most species either died from serious injuries or survived with permanent damage. But humans had evolved to use damage as a way to improve themselves. Every challenge made them stronger and more capable. Every injury taught their bodies how to resist that type of damage in the future. This was why humans had been able to survive and spread across their entire home planet while other species stayed in small, safe areas. Jake began to understand why the Zephyrians had been so wrong about human strength. They measured strength by how much damage a creature could resist without being hurt. But human strength was about how quickly and completely they could recover from damage, and how much they could improve themselves through experience. The aliens' crystal armor protected them, but it also prevented them from adapting and growing stronger. By the end of the second round of tests, the humans had not only matched the Zephyrian performance, but had begun to exceed it in many areas. The alien warriors looked tired and frustrated, while the human team seemed energized and confident. Ambassador Cathara was speechless as she watched creatures she had dismissed as fragile outperform her species' finest warriors. High Commander Vexstar realized that he had seriously underestimated the human species. These creatures that looked so weak and vulnerable had hidden capabilities that his people did not possess. He began to wonder what other surprises the humans might have, and whether the Zephyrians had made a terrible mistake in dismissing them so quickly. High Commander Vexstar was not ready to admit that he had been wrong about humans. He decided to create one final test that would be so dangerous that even the improved human team would fail. He chose the deepest part of the cave system where the most deadly creatures lived. These beasts were called Kethvari, which meant death shadows in the Zephyrian language. They were huge animals with thick armor plates and claws that could cut through metal. Even Zephyrian warriors rarely survived encounters with them. Both teams went into the deep caves together this time. The tunnels were narrow and dark, and the air was full of strange smells. Ben Carter led the human team while Ironscale led the Zephyrians. The caves went down for miles underground, and the temperature got hotter as they went deeper. Strange sounds echoed through the tunnels, and everyone could feel that. Dangerous creatures were watching them from the shadows. They had been walking for 2 hours when they found the first signs of the Kethvari. There were deep claw marks in the stone walls and piles of bones from previous victims. The Zephyrian warriors became more careful, and they checked their weapons. The humans did not have weapons as advanced as the aliens, but they stayed calm and alert. Danny Rodriguez found tracks that showed a very large creature had passed through recently. The attack came without warning. A massive Kethvari burst out of a side tunnel and charged at both teams. The creature was bigger than a truck, and its armor plates were black and shiny. Its claws were as long as swords, and its teeth were like spears. It moved faster than something so big should be able to move, and its roar shook rocks loose from the ceiling. Iron Scale tried to fight the creature with his energy weapon, but the beam bounced off the monster's armor without doing any damage. The Kethvari's claw hit Ironscale in the chest and cracked his crystal exoskeleton. For Zephyrian, this type of injury was very serious because their crystal armor could never be fully repaired. Ironscale fell to the ground and could not get up. His teammates tried to help him, but they had to focus on fighting the creature. The Kethvari turned toward the humans, and Ben Carter stepped forward to protect his team. He had no energy weapons or crystal armor, but he did not run away. The creature's massive claws swept toward him and hit him directly in the stomach. The claws went deep into his body and tore a huge wound across his abdomen. Blood poured out of the injury, and Ben fell backward against the cave wall. Sophie Lewis and Danny Rodriguez thought Ben was dead. The wound was so bad that they could see inside his body. No one could survive that kind of damage. But Ben was still conscious, and he was still trying to fight. He grabbed a sharp piece of rock and threw it at the creature's eye. His aim was perfect, and the rock hit the only unarmored spot on the monster's head. The Kethvari roared in pain. In anger, the distraction gave Void Claw a chance to hit the creature with his weapon in the same spot Ben had injured. The energy beam went through the creature's eye and into its brain. The Kethvari crashed to the ground and died. Both teams were safe, but Ironscale was badly hurt, and Ben Carter looked like he was dying from his terrible wound. The Zephyrians gathered around Ironscale and tried to help him, but there was nothing they could do. His crystal exoskeleton was cracked from his shoulder to his hip, and the crack would never heal. For the rest of his life, he would be weak and unable to fight properly. Stormshell said Ironscale's warrior days were over, and he would have to find a different job when they returned home. Ironscale made sad sounds and covered his face with his hands. Dr. Parker was monitoring Ben's condition from the ship, and she was very worried. She told the team to get him back to the surface immediately because he was losing too much blood. Sophie and Danny carried Ben out of the caves while the Zephyrians helped Ironscale. Everyone expected Ben to die before they reached the ships, but something amazing happened during the trip back to the surface. Ben's wound started to close up by itself. The bleeding slowed down and then stopped completely. New tissue began growing to replace what had been damaged. By the time they reached the ships, Ben was conscious and talking. He said the pain was going away and he felt stronger every minute. Dr. Parker examined Ben as soon as they brought him aboard. She could not believe what she was seeing. The wound that should have killed him was healing at an incredible rate. His body was rebuilding damaged organs and replacing lost blood. Within hours, the only sign of his injury was a thin red line across his stomach. Within a day, even that was gone. The Zephyrians demanded to know what kind of medical technology the humans were using. Ambassador Cathara said it was impossible for any natural creature to survive such massive trauma. She accused the humans of using forbidden enhancement technology or alien medical devices. High Commander Vexstar ordered his science team to scan Ben's body for artificial implants or drug traces. The scans showed nothing artificial in Ben's body. His healing was completely natural and powered by his own biological systems. Dr. Parker tried to explain how human bodies worked, but the Zephyrians found it hard to believe. She said humans had evolved to survive terrible injuries that would kill other species. She said their bodies had amazing redundancy and repair mechanisms, Dr. Parker asked High Commander Vexstar to let her examine Ironscale's injury. She said she might be able to help him even though she was not familiar with Zephyrian biology. The alien commander was desperate to help his warrior, so he agreed. Dr. Parker studied the crack in Ironscale's crystal armor and learned that Zephyrian bodies could not repair this type of damage. She explained that Zephyrian evolution had focused on preventing damage instead of recovering from it. Their crystal armor was incredibly strong, but once it was broken, it stayed broken forever. Humans had evolved differently because their planet was full of dangers that could not always be avoided. Instead of trying to be unbreakable, humans had learned to be almost impossible to keep broken. Dr. Parker told the aliens about human evolutionary history. She said humans had started as weak creatures that were hunted by stronger animals. They survived by being smart and working together, but also by being able to heal from injuries that would kill other animals. Over millions of years, human bodies became incredibly good at repairing damage and adapting to new threats. She said humans were persistence hunters who could chase prey for days without stopping. They could run in heat that would kill other animals and survive in cold that would freeze other creatures. They could eat foods that were poisonous to other species and drink water that was contaminated. They could fight diseases that wiped out entire populations of other animals. Commander Ryan Torres had joined the group, and Dr. Parker asked him to demonstrate human endurance. His hand had completely healed from the cut that had disgusted the Zephyrians during their first meeting. Ryan started running around the inside of the ship, and he did not stop for 3 hours. The Zephyrians watched in amazement as he maintained the same pace without getting tired. Ryan explained that humans could keep moving long after other animals collapsed from exhaustion. He said human bodies were designed to work efficiently for long periods of time. He said their muscles could repair themselves while they were being used, and their hearts and lungs could adapt to different conditions. He said humans had once hunted animals by simply following them until the prey died from exhaustion. Dr. Parker said the Zephyrians had made the mistake of thinking that toughness and strength were the same thing. She said Zephyrian crystal armor made them tough, but it also made them rigid and unable to change. Human flexibility was not weakness, but a different kind of strength. She said humans became stronger through adversity, while Zephyrians could only become weaker when their armor was damaged. She explained that human bones became denser after being broken. Human muscles became bigger and stronger after being damaged. Human skin became thicker and more resistant after being cut or burned. Human immune systems became more powerful after fighting diseases. Every challenge made humans more capable of handling similar challenges in the future. Ambassador Cathara was silent as she listened to Dr. Parker's explanation. She began to understand that she had completely misunderstood what human biology was capable of. She had seen their soft skin and flexible bones as signs of weakness, but now she realized these features allowed humans to absorb impacts that would shatter rigid crystal armor. High Commander Vexstar asked Dr. Parker if humans could teach Zephyrians how to heal like they did. Dr. Parker said it was not possible because healing ability was built into human DNA over millions of years of evolution. But she said humans could share their medical knowledge to help Zephyrians take better care of injuries they could not repair naturally. The alien commander realized that his species had been viewing strength in the wrong way. Zephyrians measured strength by how much damage you could resist without being hurt. But humans measured strength by how quickly you could recover from damage and how much you could learn from the experience. This was a completely different way of thinking about survival and adaptation. 3 days after the cave incident, both fleets were preparing to leave the system when their sensors detected something dangerous. A massive solar flare was building up in the local star, and it would hit both ship groups within hours. The flare would send out deadly radiation that could kill anyone not properly protected. Amy Chen calculated that the radiation would be much stronger than normal space radiation, and it would last for several days. High Commander Vexstar immediately ordered his ships to raise their energy shields to maximum power. Zephyrian technology was very advanced, and their shields could normally protect them from most types of radiation. But when the flare hit their ships, the radiation was stronger than expected. The energy passed right through their shields like they were not even there. Worse than that, the radiation seemed to react with their crystal armor in a way that made it even more dangerous. Ambassador Cathara was the first to show symptoms of radiation poisoning. Her crystal skin started to change color from blue-green to a sickly yellow. She became weak and had trouble thinking clearly. Other Zephyrians on the ship started showing the same symptoms within hours. Their crystal exoskeletons, which normally protected them from harm, were actually making the radiation more dangerous by focusing it into their bodies. Iron Scale was affected worse than the others because his cracked armor was letting radiation penetrate deeper into his body. The crystal fragments that had broken loose during his fight with the Kethvari were acting like tiny antennas that attracted the harmful energy. Stormshell and Voidclaw tried to help him, but they were getting sick too. The entire Zephyrian fleet was in trouble, and their medical systems could not handle this type of radiation damage. The human crew was also being affected by the radiation, but in a different way. Jake Morrison felt sick and tired, but he could still think clearly and give orders. Dr. Parker noticed that her hands were shaking and she had a headache, but she could still work. Commander Ryan Torres and the other crew members were feeling the effects, but they were not becoming as sick as the Zephyrians. Amy Chun was monitoring the condition of both fleets, and she realized that humans were handling the radiation much better than the aliens. Dr. Parker ran tests on the human crew and discovered something interesting. Their bodies were already starting to adapt to the radiation exposure. Their cells were changing to resist the damage, and their immune systems were working to repair what had been hurt. Dr. Parker explained to Jake that human bodies had evolved to handle many different types of environmental dangers, including radiation. She said humans had lived through nuclear accidents and atomic bomb tests on Earth, and some people had survived exposures that should have killed them. She said human DNA had natural repair mechanisms that could fix radiation damage if the exposure was not too severe. Jake made a decision that surprised everyone, including his own crew. He sent a message to High Commander Vexstar offering to help the Zephyrian fleet. He said human medical teams could come aboard the alien ships and try to treat the radiation poisoning. He said humans would share their knowledge about radiation treatment, even though the Zephyrians had been mean to them and called them weak. High Commander Vexstar was desperate enough to accept Jake's offer. His people were getting sicker every hour, and his medical officers did not know how to help them. He agreed to let human doctors come aboard his ship, but he warned that if this was some kind of trick, he would destroy the human vessel. Jake assured him that humans only wanted to help and they would not try to harm anyone. Dr. Parker and her medical team went to the Zephyrian flagship wearing special suits to protect them from the worst radiation. They brought human medical supplies and equipment that might help treat radiation poisoning. When they saw the condition of the alien crew, they were shocked at how sick everyone had become. Ambassador Cathara could barely stand up, and many other Zephyrians were unconscious. The human medical approach was very different from Zephyrian medicine. Instead of trying to block all damage, the humans focused on helping the body heal itself. Dr. Parker gave the aliens drugs that would help their cells repair radiation damage. She taught the Zephyrian medical officers how to support the body's natural healing instead of just protecting it from harm. Sophie, Lewis and her engineering team also went to help repair the damaged Zephyrian ships. The radiation had interfered with many of their electronic systems, and some of their shield generators had burned out. Sophie worked with Zephyrian engineers to fix the problems, even though she was still feeling sick from the radiation exposure. Herself, Ben Carter led a team of human workers who helped move supplies and equipment between the ships. Even though he had been nearly killed just days before, he worked harder than anyone else. The Zephyrians were amazed to see him lifting heavy equipment and working for hours without rest. His body had not only healed from his terrible wound, but had become stronger than before. Danny Rodriguez spent his time taking care of the sickest Zephyrians. He had learned some of their language from Amy Chun, and he could communicate with them directly. He sat with Ironscale, who was the worst case, and helped keep him comfortable while the radiation treatments worked. Danny's own body was adapting to the radiation so well that he could work in areas that were too dangerous for other humans. The human crew worked around the clock to help the aliens, even though they were getting tired and sick themselves. They shared their food and water when the Zephyrian supplies ran low. They gave up their own rest time to take care of alien crew members who could not take care of themselves. They never complained or asked for anything in return. After 2 days of treatment, the Zephyrians started to recover. Their crystal skin began returning to its normal color, and they could think clearly again. Ambassador Cathara was the first to realize what the humans had done for them. She had spent days insulting human weakness and fragility, but when her people needed help, the humans had risked their own lives to save them. High Commander Vexstar gathered his senior officers to discuss what had happened. He said he had been completely wrong about human nature. He had thought they were weak because they looked fragile, but he now understood that their ability to heal and adapt made them incredibly strong. He said humans had shown not just physical strength but moral strength by helping their enemies. The alien commander called Jake to a meeting on the flagship. When Jake arrived, he saw that all the Zephyrians looked at him with respect instead of contempt. High Commander Vexstar stood up and made a formal apology for the way his people had treated humans. He said Zephyrians had confused hardness with strength and armor with resilience. Ambassador Cathara also apologized and said she was ashamed of how she had behaved. She said she had learned that true strength was not about avoiding damage, but about recovering from it and helping others do the same. She said humans had taught her people a valuable lesson about what it meant to be strong and brave. High Commander Vexstar proposed an alliance between humans and Zephyrians. He said the two species had different kinds of strength that would work well together. Zephyrian technology and armor could protect humans from some dangers, while human adaptability and healing could help both species survive in places that would kill other creatures. Jake accepted the alliance, but he made it clear that it had to be based on mutual respect. He said humans did not want to be treated as junior partners or weak creatures that needed protection. He said both species had valuable abilities and they should work together as equals. High Commander Vexstar agreed and promised that Zephyrians would never again dismiss other species based on how they looked. The two fleets worked together to establish a research station in the system. Human medical teams began teaching Zephyrian doctors about regenerative medicine and how to help bodies heal themselves. Zephyrian engineers shared their advanced shielding technology with human scientists. Both species learned from each other and became stronger together than either could be alone. Ben Carter and Ironscale became friends despite their different backgrounds. Ben helped Ironscale learn to fight effectively, even with his damaged armor. Ironscale taught Ben how to use Zephyrian weapons and tactics. They worked together to train mixed teams of humans and Zephyrians who could handle any kind of danger they might face in space. Parker made the final log entry about their mission. She wrote that humans had learned an important lesson about first contact with alien species. She said it was not enough to be strong or smart or brave. The most important thing was to show others that strength could be used to help instead of hurt, and that different kinds of strength could work together. She wrote that evolution's greatest gift to humanity was not making them unbreakable but making them impossible to keep broken. She said this gift was not just about physical healing, but about the human ability to learn from suffering and become better people because of it. She said humans would carry this lesson with them as they continued to explore the galaxy and meet new species. The story ended with both fleets leaving the system together to explore new worlds. They had started as enemies but had become allies through understanding and mutual respect. The Zephyrians had learned that strength came in many forms, and humans had learned that their greatest power